You're listening to Soundside. I'm Paige Browning. What a gorgeous weekend we just had. Were half of you out on the trails dusting off your hiking boots because it felt like it out there? I got out this past weekend to get in an early season hike. So it's Saturday morning at a little after 9 o'clock at a very busy Tiger Mountain trailhead. And there's people taking a compass class, doing some orienteering. So a lot of trail runners, people with dogs. I see a family over here. It's really busy. And I'm out here to check out some of the trails, or rather the bathrooms, that could see some changes as this year unfolds. Here's what I mean. This year, Washington State cut more than $500,000 from the state's Department of Natural Resources. And its announced budget cuts are gonna mean campground closures, less trail maintenance, and unfortunately, probably dirtier bathrooms at a lot of popular trailheads. Many are wondering how it'll impact their outdoors time because DNR maintains a lot of land. By the numbers, this one department manages over 1,300 miles of trails and more than 160 recreation sites. To some, though, this new budget cut feels all too familiar.
Our concern is that we've been in a cycle on both federal lands like national forest and national parks, as well as on state lands, where we've been chronically underfunding these places that we love.
That's Tom Vogl. He's the CEO of the Mountaineers, a group that's been getting people into the outdoors since 1906. Vogl points out these cuts aren't just symbolic. Outdoor recreation plays a big role in our economy.
The outdoor recreation economy in Washington State is $25 billion a year, and there's about 250,000 jobs that are supported in outdoor recreation.
With so much uncertainty heading into summer, we wanted to get some of our questions answered by going straight to the source, the Department of Natural Resources. So joining us now is Dave Upthegrove. He's the Commissioner of Public Lands here in Washington, which means that he oversees our Department of Natural Resources. Commissioner, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Commissioner, we know how much money's been slashed from the budget, but could you put it into context for us? How substantial are these cuts for the Department of Natural Resources and our trails?
At the Department of Natural Resources, we don't want to be reducing recreation. We want to be expanding recreational opportunities. But unfortunately, the legislature has recently made very significant cuts specifically to our recreation program. Over the last 2 years, we've seen a 20% reduction, totaling more than $8 million total in cuts. On top of that, we also saw the loss of our funding that we use to pay for the Washington Conservation Corps, the young people who help us maintain trails and campgrounds. So overall, this is a very significant cut specifically targeted at recreation and recreation maintenance.
With all these changes, the closures and reduced services, how is that actually going to look for us who get outside? How will people feel this or see this year?
My goal to manage these cuts that the legislature made was to maintain as much service as possible in ways that are safe and responsible. And that means we looked at criteria like making sure we're not disproportionately impacting any specific user groups like mountain bike riders or horseback riders. We didn't want to disproportionately impact one geographic part of the state. And like I said, we wanted to get the best bang for the buck. Unfortunately, given these deep cuts that the legislature made, we are having to close down 4 campgrounds that we operate around the state this summer. We shortening the season on a few, but where people mostly will see it is in some reductions in maintenance. You may see more garbage. You may have smellier bathrooms, those types of things.
Yeah, you are going to be closing the campground at Anderson Lake, Rock Lakes in Conconnelly, and Upper Clearwater in Forks. And then it sounds like Island Camp in Glenwood is going to close for overnight use, but the cabins and day use will stay open. Commissioner, as people are getting out, they might be wondering, about this maintenance. So the closest place to us in Seattle is going to be the Snoqualmie, North Bend region, all these amazing hiking trails. That's where I'm wondering about bathroom maintenance and trail maintenance. When we're talking about the crews, how much do they manage? How many acres does DNR manage? Let's start there.
Sure. We have about 1,300 miles of trails across 5.6 million acres of state lands. It's a lot of area to cover. And we have, I believe, currently about 60 recreation staffers,
I heard
field
that.
staffers across the state.
That does not seem like very many to me.
No, it is not. And that's the challenge. A lot of these sites are remote and require employees to travel a significant distance in order to empty a toilet and empty garbage cans. And we obviously use volunteers wherever we can. And we have wonderful partnerships with a lot of organizations. But our staff are stretched thinner than ever, are working more hours probably than they're even paid for in some cases, I bet. And we want to make sure that our staff don't have expectations on them that can't be met. And so we do a lot with a little is the bottom line. That's when you do the math. I did the math once, and with 60 field staff across the entire state, that's one staff person for every 21 or 22 miles of trails, for every 50,000 acres. You know, we have 20 million visitors to our lands each year. So that's one staffer for every 333,000 visitors. And then when we had the Washington Conservation Corps funding, you know, those crews that would supplement our staff, that was the equivalent of about 70 additional field staff. So we lost the equivalent of 70 additional field staff and took a 20% cut in our budget. And unfortunately, there's just no way, even with the best hard work they're doing, that you can keep doing the same thing with those kinds of reductions.
Well, and you see how popular it gets over at Mount Si, at Mailbox Peak, at Poo Poo Point to watch the people paragliding in the summer. One staff member for every 21 or 22 miles of trail. That's a lot of maintenance on one person's back.
Yeah, I think you're right that some of our most popular trails are in the Snoqualmie area off I-90. You mentioned Mailbox Peak, and my legs just hurt reminiscing about the last time I hiked that. We've got Raging River State Forest, Mount Si, Tiger Mountain. And in all those areas, you know, we are going to see reductions in maintenance, including less service to the trailhead bathrooms starting this fall. You know, these bathrooms often have double-sided restrooms. We're going to be closing one side of those restrooms to reduce the maintenance costs. So, you know, that might mean bringing your own toilet paper or plugging your nose and holding your breath for just a little bit longer as you pass those as you hit the trail this fall.
Bringing your own toilet paper to use in the restroom, we should say.
Yes, of course.
Not for off the trail, because we're not talking backcountry. We're talking, you know, stay on the trail in this area.
Yeah, it's just with the maintenance, sometimes you run out of TP.
I'm sure. I've seen
bathrooms.
I've seen it on trail reports. This is not just a $580,000 cut. The Department of Natural Resources had more than $8 million in recreation program cuts in less than 2 years. So why do you think the state legislature keeps coming for DNR? Why are these cuts continuing to happen in recent years?
You know, that's a better question to pose to the legislators. I believe that it's penny wise, pound foolish. Recreation across Washington is a crucial economic driver for a lot of the smaller local communities that actually get tourist attention because they're close to these sites. The quality of life in this state impacts our economy, the ability to attract both businesses and the employees. We are the evergreen state after all, and people like living here because they can get out and hunt and fish, because they can ride their mountain bikes, because they can go out and target shoot, because they can do these affordable, healthy, family-friendly activities. And our public lands belong to we the people. They're public lands. They're meant to be enjoyed as long as we're doing it responsibly.
I hear that sentiment from people too. You know, it's the why behind people living here because of how beautiful it is and how you can get outside. But legislators have to make cuts. They have to
Yep.
prioritize what to fund. Did you have conversations with lawmakers in this past session? And if so, how did those talks go?
Yes, I have a lot of empathy for the challenges facing the legislature right now. There are no easy decisions, and I'm thankful every day I'm no longer in the legislature. But my job as state lands commissioner is to highlight the value and the importance of the work we're doing at the Department of Natural Resources. And I believe in this. You know, I was a Boy Scout, spent my summers hiking around this state. I spent a couple summers leading week-long treks to the North Cascade Mountains. This is a passion. It's largely what led me to this job, was wanting to have more opportunities, especially for young people, to get out and enjoy, the natural spaces in this state. And I shared those stories with legislators when I could, one-on-one, and even went personally in front of the budget committees to make the case on the importance of recreation funding. Not a lot of agency directors personally testify, but this was important. And I went and made sure legislators knew the importance of this, as well as the impacts if they did continue to cut funding. They have choices to make. And as I said, I don't envy that. We have schools, we have transportation, we have human services, we have all kinds of programs. But this is something that touches everyone's life in a meaningful way. And I think I'm really excited to try to build a long-term plan moving forward, working with businesses, working with recreation groups to find new major dedicated funding, not nibbling around the edges. We're arguing about how much do we reduce our maintenance backlog? How much more do we cut our funding? We need to lay out a big, broad vision. So we're doing that. We're tallying the economic benefits. We're going to identify the problems and where the shortfalls are, and then bring forward some solutions in the next few years and ask the legislature, the people of Washington, to take a big bite at this apple. This is something I think this state really values, and we're going in the wrong direction.
In just a moment, I'm going to shift gears in our conversation. But first, I have to ask about Discover Passes. I've been hearing people ask this question the last couple of weeks. We're paying more for our Discover Passes. Where's that money going? Why are they're cutting the maintenance after we've been paying more? So where does the Discover Pass fit into all this?
Yep. Most people may not know this. Do you know how much of the Discover Pass revenue comes to the Department of Natural Resources?
How much of the revenue? I would think it all goes there.
No, we get 8%.
You get 8% of the Discover Pass revenue.
Yep, less than $4 per Discover Pass comes to DNR. That's a pass that funds our state park system primarily. So even with the increase, it was very modest. Our projected forecast showed that increase will be about 1.2 million in additional revenue for DNR. At the same time, we're taking 8 million in cuts plus the loss of the Conservation Corps. So we appreciate it and we value it, but that money primarily goes elsewhere.
Okay, that's the answer to that. Now, here's where I shift gears a little bit. You're not just getting questions from us today, Commissioner. We also have a few questions from the Mountaineers. So here's
Awesome.
one of the questions that CEO Tom Vogl has for you, Commissioner.
So recognizing that the budget challenges the legislature faces, what are your ideas for how we can work together towards a more sustainable and robust funding model for DNR's recreation program?
What's your answer for Tom?
Yep. I have a shared passion for doing exactly that, building out a long-term strategy to secure dedicated funding. And right now, the state is projecting additional shortfalls in the upcoming legislative session. But one of the things I've learned is during downtimes is often the time to plan for the future. And so what we're embarking on is a vision where we can build out a coalition and build out a specific set of recommendations based on what is cost effective, efficient, what protects what we have, like cultural spaces and environmentally sensitive areas, and expands that access. And it will take some time, but I intend to provide that leadership and to put forward recommendations developed with community input in the years ahead. But I don't believe we would be successful going to the legislature next session and asking for the kinds of funding needed to implement a larger vision like that. But now is the time to build that coalition and to build out specific recommendations. And so we have that as part of our work plan in our recreation division and out of the commissioner's office. We look forward to working with the governor's office on recreation and with all of our different user groups that are so passionate, whether it's the Mountaineers or whether it's mountain bike riders. I think there's a lot of support out there. And so my vision is to build a coalition, build a set of specific recommendations. And as the state's economy improves and the state budget improves, make a case to the legislature or even to the people of the state as a whole to make major new investments.
And I also wonder, our local governments, we talked about this, lawmakers have to make decisions about funding. But for people who might think of hiking, camping, getting outdoors as a luxury or something expendable, what would you say to them? Why should people care about funding outdoor recreation?
Outdoor recreation is one of the last affordable, family-friendly, healthy activities that people can enjoy. And the whole variety of activities provides such richness to people's lives. I was down in Southwest Washington at an ORV park with motorized users doing a big public lands cleanup day. And the sense of community that's built by people with shared interests and passions, the friendships, the bonding. I remember riding those little motorized four-wheelers with my grandpa when I was a kid.
Same here.
And these are some of the memories that last a lifetime. And it's for a lot of families, they can't afford to buy a round trip airfare to Hawaii for a week and stay in hotels, but you can have amazing experiences that bring families together, bring friends together locally at an affordable price. And it's healthy and positive and fun and helps our economy. And also there's a philosophical reason. I've shared this before. These are public lands. They belong to the people. And yes, those of us in a position to manage them need to make sure we have smart management of them, but we need to manage them with that philosophy. They belong to we the people. And we have a responsibility to facilitate that access in a way that's responsible and safe.
I have one final question for you, and actually it's going to come from Tom Vogl over at the Mountaineers, about how we should adapt to these changes.
With fewer staff and resources to manage DNR's recreation areas, what can the public do to be good stewards and responsible recreationists this summer?
It is more important than ever that members of the public recreate responsibly by respecting posted site closures, reporting unsafe trail conditions to land managers, and as always, to leave no trace while being out on public lands. And public behaviors, can't make up for a difficult budget reality and a lack of resources. They can contribute to a larger respect and appreciation for public lands. I encourage people to stay active in organizations that share their interests, like the Mountaineers, like the Backcountry Horsemen, any of these user groups, because those organizations volunteer their time and energy to help us manage these lands and to share information out. So recreate responsibly and participate in being part of the solution and in helping us manage these lands.
All right, until next time, I'll be packing an extra garbage bag and TP in my sack for the hike. Dave Upthegrove is the Commissioner of Public Lands here in Washington State, which means he oversees our Department of Natural Resources. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime right here online at KUOW.org, or of course on your favorite podcast app.